You guys essentially let go of DC for nothing, for peanuts. What was your experience, and what did you know much about him? Were you following much of his footy career? And yeah, how do you see all of that? And I think it was Dwayne Russell who brought it to light on radio. He says, take it to the bank. We're going to see a wild card weekend, I think, as early as next season. What are your thoughts on introducing something like that? And then maybe we can go across the room.
Nick Daicos, Heaney, what are your thoughts about the suspensions, writing someone off for the Brownlow? Do you think it needs to be reshaped, reformed? What would you like to see?
Champs, we're here for another Pies Eyes episode. I don't know what number we're up to at the moment, but we're back for another week, and we've got another special guest as per usual. I feel like I say that every week, but I mean that from the bottom of my heart. We've got RilesMacca, a diehard Sydney fan, and quite the, I guess, what would you say, expert? I don't know. He's really good at, I suppose, bringing to light some nostalgic moments that we've come across and experienced as a footy world, namely some video essays / documentaries on the Recruit show that you posted last year. That's done extremely well, and it strings some sensitive strums in my heart, because that was something I used to look forward to every evening after the gym with my brother. Riles, how you going?
Yeah, no, great. Thanks, guys. Keen for a chat tonight. It's always a pretty interesting rivalry. I think these two sides have had some pretty good games the past few years, the prelim final, Ryan Clark digging into Nick Daicos. So, yeah, a bit of heat with this rivalry. I think quite a bit has happened since the game back in round one. So, a lot of form slumps between two of the sides, especially with how we've been travelling at the moment. But, cheers for the very detailed intro. Very humbled from that. And, keen for a chat.
It's definitely an interesting one where we're all spread across Australia today. Champ, you're in Melbourne. Riles, you're in Canberra. And I'm all the way in Perth today, in my hotel room. Legitimately just got into my hotel room, set up the mic. We're here right now. You touched on the 2022 prelim. You want to dive a little bit deeper, even though it's a soft spot. And we said we'll save it for the chat. We'll enlighten you why this is a really hard topic for Anthony and I to discuss. And it is because I don't even know how we got tickets. We got tickets, Champs. You organised it. And we're like, how are we going to get there? I suggested to drive. I got outvoted. Two Collingwood supporters and Anthony and I, another mate, Richmond supporter. We decided to go up with the cheer squad on the bus. It was like an 11-hour bus drive, Riles. We were up and about on the way there. It was all happy. And my God, it was a somber feeling on the way back. It was the most depressing. I remember getting yelled at by Sydney supporters going, get a F off back to Melbourne as we get back on the bus. It was people in Magpies costumes. Like, I haven't got to tell this story because I had tickets the next week for the grand final through work. I actually told this story to Nick Daicos, and he was saying, why the fuck did you catch a bus? He's like, I love the support, but why did you catch a bus? And I'm like, mate, I got outvoted. Do you want to enlighten us about your experience on that day, which I'm sure not a lot of our fans will have fond memories of?
It certainly was a crazy day, and I definitely feel for the Pies supporters losing that one by a point. I mean, 2022, the season was full of comebacks from your boys, and it was a really just crazy game. Probably felt like we could have won by more, but I think Sam Reid went down, who was pivotal to us in that run, and then we just almost choked, really. I couldn't believe what I was watching, and then the euphoric film and the siren went. Still got the vlog up on my channel, and I was just I was going pretty crazy. One of the best games I think I've been to live, and just the grand final though the week after was a bit of a just ultimately flat sitting up in the top deck for 2.5 hours, but certainly was a crazy game back 2 years ago.
Yeah, a bit of a reality check there. And if you don't know, Riles, we actually interviewed the better Reid brother a couple weeks ago. If you can go back and watch that. But look, we'll talk about the similarities in our seasons and, mainly for us, our 2023 season and how we dropped a couple of games late. This year, Sydney, a little bit of a form slump, absolutely got, how do I put this lightly? Got bent over by Port. What are you guys feeling? How are you feeling as a Sydney fan? We're going into this week. We play you guys Friday night in the SCG. My tail's up and about after that Carlton win, Richmond win. Can we get you guys and save our season? How are you guys feeling on that side of the fence?
Well, I think if you're a Pies supporter, you're certainly feeling confident with how we've been running. I feel like probably since the Carlton game or the or half time against that Giants game when we put we were up by like 40 points. I feel like we've been papering over the cracks with how we've been playing a little bit. Our pressure game's really dropped off a bit. Our ability to move the ball well from the defensive half, which we were very good at the start of the year, has dropped off quite a bit. Our work rate and defensive transitions also not been as good. And I think the key thing is our star players like Isaac Heaney's dropped off. Chad Warner isn't getting as much production in front of goal. Grundy as well. A lot of those key players aren't really pulling their weight. And when that happens, it affects the whole team. And we've had a few struggling role players too. So we've been able to have some few gallant defeats, like against Brisbane, for example. We had our injury woes, but yeah, the last 2 weeks has been pretty telling. We've just been absolutely exposed when trying to move the ball. Defensively, we've just been poor. And in the midfield, like a contested game, feel like it's been another area where it's just not been good enough. And just those season stars like Isaac Heaney, etc., just haven't been pulling their weight. So don't know how to feel coming into this week. We haven't been beaten usually. Whenever you usually get beaten by 40 points or more, and it's just been a shock the past fortnight. So I actually did see John Longmire said in his press conference earlier today that he actually gave the players a few days off, a few days extra of just to refresh mentally and physically, which I'd say is a pretty unusual thing, especially with a short turnaround facing the Pies Friday night. So, yeah, the mental toughness, the physicality's dropped off too. So it's not looking great, but I like to be optimistic. I think we should be able to bounce back and get back on the horse. So, yeah, it's a big game, certainly, Friday night.
Yeah, I think... Oh, you go, champs.
I was just going to add, because just to your last point there, Riles, about being able to bounce back, and we had this later in a segment, but it just makes sense to bring it up now. Is the question is it a good time for the Swan to be coming up against the Swans, or is it a bad time? And I suppose Collingwood fans could make the case that both sides is a good time and a bad time, and I'm sure the Swans could probably make the case that it's a good time and a bad time. Are you able to extend upon that conversation? How, I guess, yourself being a Sydney fan would interpret that, I guess, metaphor or cliche, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, it's always a common saying within any fan, it's a good time to play this side here or there. I think always you're maybe a little bit nervy when playing a side that's needing to rebound, needing to fire up. And we do play our best brand of footy usually at home at the SCG, even though we've dropped a couple there this year. But as I say, again, I don't know how to feel. Like, from my point of view, are we going to bounce back? I was suspecting we were against Port Adelaide, or at least against the Bulldogs, but that hasn't been the case. We just haven't played like our true brand. Like, we've just turned the ball over way too much. We've had liabilities in defence. We haven't been tough enough in the coalface. So I think this week it's just important to get back to our the skill areas too, get back to some fundamentals. And obviously train well this week heading into it's going to be a pretty tricky game.
Yeah, I love the fact that just footy. We always think it's the physical side, right? Like, you got to get your body right, you got to do all the right things. So I'm physically prepared for Friday's night game, but what doesn't get talked about enough is the mental side. So maybe just having a couple of days off for a Sydney player and what it means for the season, it's actually a good thing, right? Because you get to refresh and just look at it in a new perspective, hopefully coming back of having a couple of days off. So I love hearing that. Hopefully it doesn't work too well and we do get a cheeky win on Friday night.
I feel like I feel like dependent on the result, the media will say Sydney, if they lose, they shouldn't have had the couple of days off. If they win, they go Longmire's a genius. But just circling back to another point you bring up, not being tough enough in the coalface. I guess doing the previews, naturally, I do have to pay some sort of, notice to what the opposition trends are in recent times. And the last 5, it's not going to look pretty for Sydney, but just to, validate your point furthermore, Sydney are a bottom 2 side in the contest in their last 5 matches, next to the West Coast Eagles right at the bottom. And we know that, going into a final series, the hat you want to, where you want to hang your hat on is in the contest, generally speaking. So that seems to be a little bit concerning. And is there anything specifically when you're looking in the contest? Is it just players not going hard at it? Is it what is it to you?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty fair enough stat here and that. The last 5 weeks, ranked 17th, was it? 17th alongside the Eagles. Yeah, I think it was like minus 30 ground ball gets against the Bulldogs the previous week as well, and I think it was like our worst contest possession differential in the first quarter by any team this year. I think we got smacked by like 25 or more contest possessions in the first quarter. Just aren't winning many general contests around this in general play around the ground. Like we kick towards a contest and just not winning it and getting it forward. In stoppages, we've been getting well beaten too. The absence of Rowbottom's been pretty big. Missed the game against Brisbane, missed the game also against the Bulldogs. Came back in, obviously, against Port, but, he isn't 100% sharp, so maybe another game will definitely suit him. But, and alongside that, just plays out of form. Isaac Heaney's been able to be a pretty clean play at ground level, but it just feels like it's all him when winning contested ball. Callum Mills looks awfully out of form and not enough match fitness. I don't know if he should be getting another centre bounce. I think he's better for us as a defender, kick behind the play. So, yeah, plays out of form and just not winning enough general contests is definitely where I see it.
Champ, I'm not sure if you know this, but also I want to, I guess, give this attention to the viewers. You mentioned the ground ball gets. That is 2/3 of the contested possession count is attributed to the ground ball. So if you obviously pick up a ground ball, that is considered a contested ball. So if you're saying you're minus 30 in ground ball against Western Bulldogs, I guess you can almost point to that in a nutshell, along with the hard ball gets being the other 1/3 of the contested possessions. That points to one of the big problems that Sydney seems to be dealing with right now.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think they always say that loose ball gets probably a little bit more important, but yeah, just when it's in free play, when we do get possession, not really looking like our brand and using it wisely too. Some awful turnovers we've copped up as well. And the absence as well of Tom Papley forward of the ball is hurting a bit too. It's making our forward line look pretty average. So, yeah, we're having a few personnel issues, but when you get beaten by 112 points, it's certainly, I think, the issue heading into this week. The effort needs to be much better.
Just to add on to that as well, like your score origin, if you look at your score sources, like you're still ranked pretty high for defensive half transition scores, but you guys are currently ranked last in forward half scoring opportunity. So it looks like the ball does go forward from the contest. You actually not be able to capitalize off that. You normally just score it off transition from a rebound. So something to add as well, like they're not hitting up targets within their 50 possibly as good as they could be.
Yeah, they're, I think, certainly got to improve. They've just been bombing it quite a bit long. Inside 50 against the Dogs was just awful, kicking to Buku Kamis and Liam Jones left, right and centre all the time. So our service from our tools could be a little bit better. Marty will come back in this week, which will think will be handy. Probably one of our more better contested marks. Probably Luddins comes out. McLean plays a little bit more full-time, down forward a bit. So, yeah, I think contested mark games. And just our use inside 50 definitely got to neaten up heading into Friday night.
Yeah. Riles, now, remembering that first game earlier this year, and Sydney's won wood to a certain extent along with their defensive half transition, which is sort of keeping them afloat at the moment. At the end of the day, Sydney is still the number one side in the comp, whether, obviously the last few weeks have been the last few weeks, but I think Collingwood conceded like 77 points from turnover against Sydney in that first game, which is well above AFL average, which sits at around the 48-point mark. And then once again, another stat in the last 5 matches is obviously scores from turnovers being, I think, last in the league. And then like Caleb said, it's the defensive half transition that you guys are sort of keeping you guys alive. If you want to talk to that, that's great. But I also want you to tell us about what you as a Sydney fan are licking your lips at when you look at the Collingwood side. So I feel like we're talking down Sydney like they're a bottom 2 side, but to be truthful, Collingwood are much more closer to that than Sydney are.
Well, you've definitely got to respect the opposition. I just think Collingwood, when they have that energy game going, when they're able to move the ball really well, get the synergy up, they're a bloody tough team. So I always hold my breath when they transition it very fast through the corridor and etc. But watching this year, I think they've been a bit exposed defensively. Like Billy Frampton, Darcy Moore have had some down games, but they were pretty good last week. I think Darcy Moore had probably one of his better games of the season, being able to keep Charlie Curnow goalless. So, I think I look at it is if we can just move it well, pick apart our targets inside 50 very nicely, we have a chance to stretch Collingwood's defence. The forward line too, with no Myercheck. Does Kruger maybe come back in for you guys? That will probably stretch our defence a little bit as well. But I think the forward line and our back line match up quite well. And also in the midfield, no Degoe will certainly be a beneficiary to us. Mitchell's been out for quite some time too. So negating Daicos, who's just the king of getting those contest possessions in and under, we've got to definitely keep him quiet.
Yeah, with no Mitchell being out for the rest of the season, so he's not going to be playing for the remainder of the season. And then obviously Degoe as well with the hamstring last week. So yeah, it is going to be interesting. I don't know what happens there, champs, with like Ned Long. Does he live to fight another day? We'll see.
Riles, the difficult thing with this is you were probably losing your mind watching Sydney and Port while we were sort of keeping our eyes on Collingwood and Port. Have you seen much in Ned Long, or from what you've heard or what you've seen, or what are your thoughts?
I think he's a bit of a serviceable player, really. I thought he was okay.
Kindly
back and forth from him. Yeah. But I think like him, Lockie Sullivan, Jack Bytel, there's probably a few of those Verge players, and I'm assuming will rotate for you guys. So maybe one of those guys will come in this week. But yeah, speaking of that, of the game last week, it was a very fun stream to do. It's 2 years in a row now that there's a Sydney game at the same time as one of the games of the year. Because last year when the Swans and Freo were playing, that's when Port and the Pies were playing. That was probably one of the games of the year last year, and that's exactly what happened this year. When I almost ended my stream, my chat was saying McGovern kick after the side. I'm like, oh wait, what's happening? I switched it on. McGovern's about to line up. I'm like, oh god. So good thing I didn't miss it, the best moment live. But yeah, it's been a bit unfortunate, and I'm hoping next year the AFL can definitely fix up on some of the fixturing, having some good quality games at the same time.
Riles, I must admit, at halftime during the Collingwood Carlton game, Caleb and I and a few of the lads were at the pub watching the footy. I had to tune into a bit of RilesMacca on the live stream because I know you wear it honestly, and I think you were on break. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna check how he was reacting as the score got further and further away from you. Mate, kudos to you, mate. Like my question to that, and I want to know something beyond that as well. But how do you, as a streamer commentating through the game, which I want to know more about where that passion comes from, you commentating the game, most games live from the weekend or a lot of games, how do you manage tempering your passions and I guess more explicit thoughts when you're live streaming a game of the Swans like that?
Well, I made a promise to myself this year not to swear as much. My monetization values for my streams of like the past 2 years are all unlimited because I swear too much. So I wanted to like tone down the cursing a little bit. But yeah, you always want to let your emotions flow a little bit when you stream, when you're doing live streams and stuff. But I don't see myself as like an absolutely crazy and ultra passionate fan. I like to keep pretty level headed when watching games and try not get too carried away. But the main thing is this year, there hasn't been really many close games. Like all of our wins have been pretty convincing. So I haven't been at the top of my level yet, getting crazy. There's been a few close games where we lost to the Saints. I was absolutely devastated how we choked that game. The one against Fremantle when Logan McDonald, after the start, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get carried away too early because Ollie Florent, I got too carried away when Ollie Florent kicked that, what I thought was a goal against Port, but it landed short and I made myself look like a fool. But I think just ultimately, yeah, you don't want to, do anything that upsets YouTube, like swear too much or anything. But yeah, I think it's always important to let your emotions flow. But I just see myself for the most part as just a pretty mild-mannered guy and just wants to enjoy watching the footy and commentate and also, get the chat involved.
And Champs, what are your thoughts about us? Do we swear a little bit too much?
Yeah, we're trying to keep Daddy YouTube too happy.
We were trying to be, but we're also trying to be authentic as well. And then we do drop a few F-bombs here and there. I don't know if we're trying to clean it up, but it is something we play. It is in the back of the mind. But hey, man, if it makes good content and you've been who you are, just let it flow, Riles, I reckon.
Riles, yeah, champ, you go. That's you, brother.
Nah, I was gonna say what would make me swear in as a Sydney fan, and we're gonna be talking suspensions and Brownlow. Nick Daicos, Heaney, what are your thoughts about the suspensions, writing someone off for the Brownlow? Do you think it needs to be reshaped, reformed? What would you like to see?
Oh, just keep it how it is. It's best and fairest award for a reason. The suspensions have been a little bit light this year. You could see why Heaney was suspended because you can't really bend those rules. If you hit someone on the play, even though he didn't do it, it's off the ball though, so it's intentional. As soon as it was announced that it was upheld, I was just like, okay, just let it slide. And it blew a bit too much out of proportion, like the apology video where I instantly laughed at. This probably was a bit too far, and the Giants admin bloody roasting us once again. It all was a little bit too crazy. I could see why fans are passionate, but just want to focus on winning the flag this year, and that's definitely a high priority of mine. He's definitely an important player, Heaney, but I thought of it as a pretty beneficial thing because it felt like Heaney needed a bit of a rest, so a week off would have been handy. But yeah, I think just keep it how it is, really, with the Brownlow. If you get suspended, oh, well, you can't win it. That's definitely my stance on it. And there's also some pretty quality awards too, like the coaches' votes. You can still win that if you get suspended, which is a pretty credible award.
Yeah, well, this is my stance on it. And, you are correct in the sense of it is best and fairest. But I'm just saying we're living in a world where a lot of players are getting suspended for minor like head knocks. I know you protect the head and all that stuff, but things that you wouldn't see in the 80s. In the 80s, I'll go run through Cass over there, champs, and I'll chin him on the jaw. I get 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Whereas now, I'm probably resting up for 10 weeks. And I'm just trying to say what I would like to see is, depending on what the person did, maybe would have like, hey, if it's a 2-game ban, if you only get suspended for a week, you only have that 2-week buffer, or is it a 3-week buffer that it still makes you eligible for the BNF? Because imagine you win the Brownlow and you've actually missed 2 weeks of footy. Like, that's a pretty good feat to do, right? So that's my opinion on it. Champ, you got an opinion as well? Something you'd like to see?
I like the idea of like an upper limit. So say hypothetically, if you get 3 weeks worth of suspension, I would deem that reasonable to suggest or indicate that the person doesn't deserve the Brownlow. Obviously, what they've done is important as well. But you just hate to see on Brownlow night, because you can see it coming from a mile away. If Heaney ends up winning the Brownlow, but he doesn't actually get to take the honours home because he's suspended, it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like it puts a little bit damp on the person is winning it as well, right? Like they've technically finished second.
Yeah. Bit like the who was it, Riles? Was it Trent Cotchin and Sam Mitchell who took it away? Obviously different circumstances, but that's always a bit of a sensitive subject when it comes to that Brownlow night, right?
Yeah, I think it was 2012, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Stripped off him later. Yeah.
Riles, Isaac Heaney. So his season's been incredible. Like what he was able to do over the course of his first 15 odd games was nothing short of, all time. He was averaging a player rating of 17.7, and I'll add context to that. He's up to 92 coaches' votes, 25 disposals a game, and scoring-wise through the roof, 1.3 goals for predominantly a midfielder, considering he's averaging 73% of his centre-backs attendances. However, the stark contrast in Heaney's last 4 games, he's only collected 3 coaches' votes, so 89 were before the last 4. He's down to 23 disposals, which isn't massive. But I suppose the other big knock is he's not scoring as much as well. So I guess, what are you seeing from Isaac Heaney specifically? I know it's hard. There's so many intangibles, the psychology behind it, but what do you think it is behind? Is it a team thing, or is there something that Isaac Heaney could do from what you're looking at?
Oh, well, it's his first full season as like a pure midfielder. He's always been a really capable player in his early years of being able to pinch it a little bit in the midfield, make some impact there. But this is like a first year of having high CBA's midfield role. So maybe just that's getting him, catching up on him a little bit. I feel like he's been carrying a little bit of niggles here and there. I saw post game last week. He had a bit of ice on his foot. He had hurt his shoulder a little bit back when we played the Crows as well. So maybe he's carrying something. But yeah, looking a bit tired out there. His contested stuff, as I said earlier, has still been excellent. He's probably one of our more cleaner ground level players. But don't know what's happened with his kicking. You look at it when he's hitting targets inside 50, who it kicks way too short instead of lace out. His kicking for goals been a big drop off too. So, yeah, that's definitely the areas of concern when you look at Heaney. Just his impact forward of the ball has definitely dropped off a bit. Yeah, I think we need more from the other players too. Like, it's really been Heaney or bust, winning most of our contested ball in a few games where we haven't looked too great. So that's certainly what I think of Heaney.
Jams, anything to add there?
No, I think, as I love to say, hit the nail on the head.
Love that. What about the I think recently it's come into the conversation about a potential wildcard weekend. So I'm pretty sure you love your NBA roles, or you're across it to a certain extent. Am I wrong in assuming that, or?
Not really, but I'm more of an NFL fan. When we're talking about American sports, I don't think they've got like a playoff system. So top 7 or 8 teams from each conference. So don't know how it works in the NBA.
Yeah, well, I guess what's already occurring in the VFL is like a play-in tournament. So 7 versus 8, 9 versus 10. And I think it was Dwayne Russell who brought it to light on radio. He says, take it to the bank. We're going to see a wild card weekend, I think, as early as next season. What are your thoughts on introducing something like that? And then maybe we can go across the room.
I think I'm going to have to be in the majority of this and just disagree. Why need it? Fans aren't pleading for something like this. It does. You can see it can have its beneficiaries with teams placing 9th and 10th having a crack and of pushing into contention for a flag. But then you have games like round what happened 2 years ago when the Pies knocked off the Blues, Jamie Elliott getting that clenched goal. Some of those games just become redundant. So, yeah, it decreases the value of those crucial final rounds of the home and away seasons. So, yeah, definitely disagree with introducing something like that. The VFL makes a little bit more sense because there's like 23, 24 teams. And I think my Swannies are currently sitting in 11th or 10th place. So we're a chance in the second tier. But, yeah, for the AFL, I think it's just got to be top 8.
Champ?
Nah, I agree. I agree with Riles as well. Like, at the moment, with 19 teams coming in next year, probably hold off when we get a couple more expansion teams. Maybe we hit that 20 mark, then I can see merit in it. But I reckon just park the horses, wait until the game expands a little bit more. Because to Riles' point, Collingwood Carlton last year, how good was that?
2 years ago.
2022. Yeah. How good was that?
Sure. All right. I think I disagree. So I'm glad I disagree on something here, so we can dive in a bit deeper here. So I think that Collingwood Carlton game would still hold relevancy within that context. Obviously, it wouldn't necessarily be do or die. Would it kill Carlton if that result went the same way with the play-in system? It still would, I would feel, because then they're asked to play an extra week and they're still not guaranteed finals. Sure, not to that extent that they had to endure because they were dead and gone after the final siren. But I personally like the idea of having teams ranked from 8 or 6 to technical 7 through to, as deep as 13 and 14, where you have your Gold Coast Suns of the world who actually might have a look in because of this introduction. And look, let's be honest, at the end of the day, it is a bit of, I guess, a business decision that probably is going to get it over the line because it is going to attract more crowds for a longer period of time. We see this time of the year, Riles, even just looking at the YouTube numbers, typically around this time, it's cold, it's getting to the back end of the season, you're starting to realize which teams are, I guess, in the conversation. You see St Kilda falling off, Gold Coast falling off. These teams, typically their fan base tend to check out. I think it does a lot of good things, but I understand the traditionalism and the culture behind trying to maintain what the Australian sport embodies.
Yeah, no, it certainly makes some solid points there. Whether you agree or disagree with it, I guess that's looking at both sides of the coin. Really, there's pros and cons. But I agree with what the other bloke said. Sorry, no, actually.
Here we go. Roll, here we go.
Yeah, buddy, yeah.
The whole time. Hey, if there's snippets that are going to be put together from the Pies Eyes podcast this year, that's going in.
That's going in. We're doing a compilation of all the funny moments, NPC moments. So that might have to be opening up the the compilation chance.
Yeah, that's
But
cool for
Like
me.
I said, I reckon
Progressing this
it
whole
holds
thing, guys.
merit. I just think when we get another expansion team, maybe when we go to 20, then add it in.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Just basing off your point. Once you get a few more sides in, definitely look to incorporate something like that. Top half, simple as that. Make the finals.
Yeah, love it. Riles on the other guy. Heard it here first.
Hey, outnumbered. What can I do? I'm not going to fight a losing battle. But Rose, Canberra, I've got no idea what Canberra entails, what the footy culture is like there. Is there even a culture there? Bring us into your world, mate.
Oh, Canberra's a pretty, it's a great place to live. Many different sports. It's probably more of a rugby town. There's the Canberra Brumbies and the Rugby Union and the Rays and the Rugby League. There's been a lot of talk about from the outside, or Canberra could definitely be the next city having an AFL side. I'd probably say no. Monaco probably isn't the best place to host an AFL team for multiple times every year. The infrastructure would definitely have to improve. Couldn't really see it. Maybe if there's a Canberra side, it could collaborate like the Giants are with, because they play games in Canberra. So, yeah, the Canberra side could play some games down in Albury or Wagga Wagga, the Riverina region, where a lot of good footballers come from. But yeah, no, there's a pretty balanced sporting scene, really, Canberra. There's plenty of AFL support. There's plenty of rugby support. So, yeah, best way I can really put it.
Champ, rugby man to my left.
No, Brumbies all the way. Got a couple of mates that I played rugby with playing the Brumbies. But what are you saying? You're saying you would you like to see a Canberra side as the next expansion opportunity, or would you rather see it go to NT or maybe NZ or something like that?
Oh, it'd be cool, but I just don't think it really make much sense. As I say again, the population, the infrastructure just wouldn't really tie well. The GIO Stadium over here don't think it's that great, and it's hosting two teams from different codes. So I think that's an issue on its own, and adding another sporting team here would probably just be a little bit too much. So I guess it probably make more sense to have a third WA South Australian side. I don't really have much of a definitive opinion on where the next team should be, to be honest. You can make a case for anything, but I'll probably lean towards more of the no side for a team in Canberra.
Yeah.
Would you jump ships if that was the case? Would you
like father, like son. Dad's a Swan supporter, so got to follow in his footsteps. But I'd definitely invest in a membership and support the team, and probably egg them on if there's a neutral game on, for sure.
Interesting. Anything to add to that, Champs?
No, Champs, nothing there. I guess we'll talk about two lovely Collingwood players that are in your side in Grundy and Amanda Adams. What are your thoughts on their season thus far? Grundy trade seems to be worked out well. What are your thoughts as a Sydney fan?
Oh, yeah, they've been outstanding for us. We've been crying out for an elite ruckman in so long. Hickey was a great servant to us, but it was just hobbling on one leg, especially last year, and getting well beaten in ruck contests. So just having a guy that's like Grundy's never really been the greatest hit-out ruckman, and I'm sure you two can agree over the years when Grundy was at the Pies, but just his work rate, pushing up the ground, fighting back, winning some contests, and just his ground level game. I saw he's like in the top 10 for hardball gets. So he's just his contested stuff's huge for us. And the same can be said with Adams. Like, as I say again, his kicking lets him down a little bit. And you two probably do know that quite a bit. And he's become actually scapegoat as of late. So some of his inside 50 use has been poor, but he's one of the few individuals that just goes in, gives it a real red hot crack and wins a lot of ball in and under. When he's hand passing, in and under and in the cold face, that's definitely where he's at his best, and he's just been involved everywhere around the ground for us. So yeah, I think he's been a very important player too, and picked them up for pretty much nothing. I think Grundy was a pick in the 40s, and Adams was pick 33.
Speaking of nothing, Riles, you guys essentially let go of DC for nothing, for peanuts. What was your experience, and what did you know much about him? Were you following much of his footy career? And yeah, how do you see all of that?
Yeah, well, we've had definitely a lot of, given away a lot of quality rucks in the end, letting go of Nankervis and Darcy Cameron. I think the big issue was Sam Naismith back in 2015, 2016 was pushing to be our first ruckman of the future. And fortunately, he goes down with a couple of ACL problems. But I thought he was always okay in the knee for Darcy Cameron. I didn't watch a whole heap of him back then. But I think in the end, he only played the one game. But he's just been an awesome addition to you guys the past few years. Probably one of the more improved players this year. His intercept marking's been pretty big. So that's another thing with this game. If we're just going to bomb it down long, I expect to see Darcy Cameron floating behind the ball and taking a few grabs. So, yeah, no, he's been a fine servant for you guys for sure.
Say it, champ. Say it, champ.
He is the number one intercept marking ruckman in the game. He had 4 intercept marks last week. And we've been huge on Darcy Cameron this year. I think his hit out work's been good. Hit out to advantage can work a little bit, but he's hitting the ball a lot, and his work rate to get into those positions to work back have been elite. And that's what's been really good to see him develop this intercept mark, and then also the hit up mark as well. He took a couple marks inside 50 as well. We're barking at the bit of, hey, all Australian. What about your thoughts looking on the outside? Do you think he's having an all-Australian year?
Yeah, the ruck debate for the All-Australians is a pretty intriguing one. Does Gawn get it this year? Like, it'd be so just usual for the All-Australian panel just to give it to Gawn because it's a pretty, favourable pick. It's Max Gawn, for goodness sake. He's made a whole bit of All-Australians. But he's had a few form issues. He's had a few ordinary games. He's had injuries. I think Sherry's probably the next in line to get it. He's had an ultra consistent year, but I think Cameron certainly warrants a selection in the top 40. But I think just a few of those other ruckmans, like add in Rowan Marshall too, probably have a bit more quality over a player like Cameron. But I think surely Darcy Cameron would be pushing for top 5 and the best and fairest, at least for your side this year.
Oh, he'll definitely be up there. I reckon top 3 if I had to put money on it.
Yeah.
He's probably, outside of Nick Daicos, he's probably been our most consistent player throughout the ups and downs of 2024, which has been positive. So hopefully he gets to reap the benefits at the end of the year. I'm not sure when his contract ends, so I'm not sure whether he will, be offered something a lot more, a greater contract essentially. But you mentioned Naismith before with those recurring ACLs, and we can go far back as to, is it Alex Johnson? Alex Johnson as well. Paddy McCartan. But let's talk about, you being a Sydney fan, a passionate Sydney fan. What's the emotional reaction when you see these blokes consistently going down? You see Nick Newman, a good buddy of Alex Johnson, bawling his eyes out on the field after obviously his final ACL. What goes through your mind in those moments?
Oh, that's certainly one of my more favourite photos of all time, to be honest. You brought it up quite well. The Nick Newman one, a very sad crying. I think that was when we beat the D's and would have been 2018, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, that was one of my more favourite games. And again, it was against you guys. It's not because it's against Collingwood, but that's when he made his massive return. Tommy McCartan kicking the winner. But yeah, definitely emotional. And Alex Johnson was just a very unlucky story, just having so many of those repeated ACLs. It reminds me of the McStay doco that I think Colin put out. There's like a little video that the Swans put out of his progress over the years, coming back from ACL repeated injuries. But yeah, you certainly do feel emotional. And I feel like when looking at it, especially with Paddy McCartan, geez, we'd love a player like him at the moment. I think his ability 2 years ago to lock down on some good quality small forwards, he's left a bit of a gaping hole. And Rampy 34, he's definitely, his time's almost up too. So yeah, certainly do feel emotional when you see those guys go down.
Champ, anything there? Or you've got nothing there?
Nah.
All good. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. The Paddy McCartan one last year, how innocuous that concussion issue was. That was traumatic, wasn't it?
And yeah, it definitely wasn't. What made it look even worse, it didn't look too bad from the broadcast view when he went down against Port. I thought, oh, how does he get concussed from that? But he's had that many, that's like, oh, dude, that must be pretty bad then. And I went to the game against the Hawks in 2022 down in Tassie. It was, I think, on Anzac Day, and he had, I think, a concussion then, but just you could hear the contact from up in the stands, the big whack, and it just makes you think, bloody hell, these blokes go out there and compete so hard. And when you think about it, Paddy's had a lot of them. It's definitely fair enough. I'm happy for his health and his body that he's retired, and he's actually been at the club, just a bit of a mentor role. He's seen him on and off the field a little bit, just in huddles and helping out the team. So yeah, it's good to see the relationships, and it's still very high with Paddy at the club today.
That'll be one of the stories from this year, won't it, Riles? The absence of McCartan, similar to Collingwood with Nathan Murphy, champs?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with the concussions as well because you got Krugs who's out with concussion. He's still out. Who's meant to come back and return this week, will be available, and he's wasn't available for that. And we had Josh Carmichael as well, who's got concussed, multiple concussions as well, and obviously he had to retire. And my biggest thing is like with the concussions, it's like I wonder how do these boxers who get repetitively head trauma to the head every bloody day when they're training, like what's going on there? And like it baffles my mind how the concussion. I don't know. It feels like they're like inept to concuss. Like I'm not too sure with the symptoms going on because you see it in footy and I find it baffling how these guys are doing boxing, MMA. You see them get flatlined, and then you see them 3 months later out there fighting.
I think, Riles, if you want to add to that in a second, but I think as well, like, look, I don't want to go too far down a tangent because we don't know what's going on between the four walls of these people who are experiencing concussions. But at the same time, is it, we'll know in 10, 15 years whether this is a true overreaction or whether it was a genuine, I mean, like Caleb said, with MMA, you get knocked out cold, you train every day, and then you're back in 3 months. My biggest gripe, Champs, know you love that word. My biggest gripe with it all is if fighters are brutally knocked out, Riles, they're forced to take 3 to 6 months off. If we want to err on the side of caution with concussion, if someone's knocked out cold, like Cunningham, he shouldn't be returning in 2 weeks or 2-3 weeks, risking concussion again. Shouldn't they go, yep, cool, all right, let's nip it in the bud, let's wrap him up in cotton wool for 3 months and go from there?
Yeah, bloody good points. I just think always the highest priority is just to protect the players and making sure the right things are in place for players' mental and physical well-being. That's probably the best I can add to that.
Yeah, brilliant. Champs, have you got anything else? I think 40 minutes, hard and fast. We've got the Sydney preview in. Hopefully we can shake hands after the game and be jovial and move on. Hopefully Sydney still moving on to bigger and better things. Collingwood, you might end our season. We might get an extra be granted an extra extra week if we get the win. Anything to add there, Champs?
Riles, just do what you can. Speak to the boys. Just let Collingwood have this one. All right, you guys all locked up there. We're fighting for our life down here, mate. We're fighting. All right. I want something to cheer for when it comes to September. All right, pull some strings, do something.
I actually did see that no side's locked in for the 8, so I wouldn't mind this one just to lock things away. Geez, if we bloody fall out the 8, it'll be disastrous. And I think there's been a little bit of chatter about a bit of pressure now on John Longmire. He's never been able to. Look at the past decade, we've lost 3 grand finals in a row. There's now questions on, is he able to mentally prepare these players in these big key games? So I think a lot of pressure's on him this week to get the players going, recuperate the players, prepare them well. And can we just at least maybe win a first quarter? Just the start of our games have definitely been probably one of the biggest issues this year.
We're going to wrap up, but I got one more question. Call it a question without notice. All right, Riles? You, Canberra, we're going to call you Sydney Sider. What are your thoughts about MCG? Always been a lock. You guys can't win, mate. We go back 2022, mate. Fuck, I reckon I could put a VFL side out there do better than what you guys did against Geelong. But what do you reckon? It seems like you're quite traditional in the sense of you want to keep the best and fairest. You want to keep the wild card. Something kind of against your favour about going down the MCG with potentially against the Melbourne squad. Would you like to see that change maybe to a home final for whoever the higher ranked team is?
I've always had a ponder about it, and it wouldn't be very a favourable thing. I think for the most part, the majority would definitely say just keep the MCG, and I like it there. Like just the venue itself, the MCG, pretty special on grand final day, daytime too. Maybe like a neutral venue. So if it's a Victorian and an interstate side could have it at Optus Stadium, or probably Adelaide Oval wouldn't be big enough for a grand final. But yeah, just keep it at G. And we usually are quite good at the MCG. That's what people do forget. Sure. But then when we drop games, it does come back up. And 2 years ago, very young side playing a Geelong side that with Selwood and Hawkins and Dangerfield, like it seemed like their time was now. So you could make a bit of an excuse, but. Yeah, we just wanted to bloody play better in general when the moments matter for sure. And it's a big chance coming up this week.
early 2000s, 2010s, this Sydney did get it done in the grand finals, but we're here in 2024 and we'll find out a little bit more about this talented Sydney side in the next 8 weeks. Thanks for watching, guys. All the best.
Good luck. Thank you
Cheers,
very
Miles.
much.
Thanks, Miles.
Thanks, Riles.
Sorry, I might do